Thank you to Curiosity Stream and Nebula for sponsoring my video. Follow the link in my description for exclusive and ad-free videos. Hello there everyone, I'm Soph, these are my notes. Period. Everyone is hormonal, that's no secret. Everyone out there has hormones that control them to some extent. But hormone cycles don't just belong to those of us who have periods. There's also a male hormonal cycle, one that loops every 24 hours. Testosterone levels start high early in the morning and slowly go down until they're at their lowest in the evening. Now I can make a whole other video on this, and perhaps one day I shall. But the point is that this 24-hour cycle complements the working day well, with you having loads of energy in the morning to help you get going, which then mellows out in the evening, ready for you to relax. However, for those of us with more complex 28-day menstrual hormonal cycles, we're not in quite as much luck. Whilst expected to have a similar 24-hour schedule to our day, our hormones tell a different story. Yes, we do still have 24-hour rhythms related to sleep-wake patterns and the like, but we're far more likely to biologically vary day to day than people on a 24-hour hormone cycle. And because hormones are so powerful, this can really affect our ability to do what we'd been planning to do. I personally am always taken aback when I check my period tracking app and realise that weird inexplicable sadness I was struggling to escape from, or that social anxiety that smacked me in the face, was due in no small part to the chemicals coursing through me. And that shouldn't be a surprise, seeing as essentially everything we experience and do is controlled by chemicals in our brain and other places, but it is a surprise. It surprises me. And no, I get that we're not completely defined by our hormones, but they're often a pretty strong lens that reflects how we see the world around us. Now, those two mood examples I just gave reflect a bit of a problem. I said sadness and I said anxiety. I've only come to notice my hormones when they affect me negatively. What about the positives? Well, turns out there are 4 main hormonal stages of the menstrual cycle, governed by the science hormones of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Each stage has its own associated characteristics and mindsets, and therefore has its own benefits. Yes, I said benefits because there are plenty. This is wonky. There we go. If you can recognise these stages, then you can harness them to make the most out of your days, turning your cycles from a burden into something you can plan your work around and use to your advantage. This makes menstrual cycles a really powerful productivity tool, and as lovely as Thomas Frank is, I don't think I've ever seen him mention it, so I'm gonna do it. Look at me, stepping into productivity YouTube. Next thing you know, I'll have a bullet journal. A quick note though, let's not just look at this from a productivity standpoint. Despite what hustle culture may wish, learning about the menstrual phases and stages is also useful to get the most from your days in a general sense, and it's beneficial for everyone to help them get to know their friends, partners, kids better. So not having a menstrual cycle isn't an excuse to switch off. How useful. A few quick asterisk points. 1. As a freelancer, I understand that I'm probably in more of a position than most to make my work suit my cycle, and I completely understand that not everyone is in such a position. However, this is more about taking a little bit of inspiration from your cycle stage than to potentially move around plans where you can. 2. The duration of each cycle phase varies from person to person. I, for example, have a period every 3 weeks rather than every 4. Not a joke, just my life. But that's my way of saying that I'm talking about averages here. 3. Of course, a lot of things can affect your cycles, from birth control to stress to menopause. These things can make them irregular or even get rid of them completely, but I will touch on the idea of working out your personal hormonal fluctuations and cycles later on. Estrogen versus estrogen, which coincidentally is French for estrogen versus westrogen. I pronounce it estrogen and spell it with an O because if you haven't noticed, I'm British. 5. Just to reiterate, the existence of these phases doesn't mean you are completely under the control of your hormones. They just act to potentially affect the likelihood that you may feel one way or the other. Okay, that's enough, let's take to the stages. The follicular phase, momentum, creativity, and idea generation. Averages around 11 days. The start of a new menstrual cycle is often measured from the first day of bleeding and menstruation, but I want to talk about the phase that comes after that first, the follicular phase. Sometimes it might overlap a little bit with your period, and it's at this point that follicles are being stimulated in your ovaries, hence follicular. These follicles are prepping to release an egg, so your uterus lining gets thickened, and importantly, estrogen gets boosted. This boost is accompanied by a rise in your energy levels, confidence, and willingness to take risks. All these things mean this is a good time for creativity, so try new things, brainstorm, mastermind, come up with solutions, tackle those more difficult tasks that maybe you've been avoiding, especially during the period that came before when you were probably a little bit more mellow. I like to think of this as a time of expanding things, coming up with new ideas. The honing of said ideas and editing down of your thoughts can come at a stage that's a bit more suited to that kind of activity. Now is a time that leans towards action and enthusiasm and energy. One website that gives all the stages fun names calls this the superstar stage, although it's worth noting that hormonal increases during the stage are gradual, so don't worry if you aren't coming up with game-changing ideas from the moment the blood stops coming out of your bits. Next up is the ovulatory phase: communication, socialising, and hotness. Averages, just 2 days. Here's something about me. Whilst researching this video, I was in my ovulatory phase, so I wanted to get out and I wanted to So it wasn't the most productive time for sitting at my computer looking at articles about all these phases, but I felt great. Ovulation is when an egg is released from your ovary. Estrogen and testosterone both reach a peak here, testosterone being at a lower level than estrogen. Those peaking hormones, estrogen and testosterone, make you more extroverted, energized again, and sociable. This phase often lasts longer than the actual action of egg release, with these hormonal changes trickling into the surrounding days. It's your peak fertile window and a short and sweet time where you're really feeling yourself. Your communication skills are top level, so organise your big work meetings, network, and get socialising. Work in groups, ask for a raise, show your work to others, have those difficult chats, do a TED talk, go on a date, but remember, take precautions if necessary. Peak fertile window and all that. This is such a great phase that the fun name site actually chose a more boring name here: active communicator, which is a formal way of saying you're hot and cool and good to talk to. Well, better to talk to than usual maybe. Have meaningful conversations and go get 'em, tiger. But dire warning, don't say yes to too much, because you may be in a high energy place now, but that could mean you end up making loads of plans for the next phase when you're not feeling quite as buzzed. That next phase being the Luteal Phase: editing, admin, and loose end tying. Averages about 12 days. AKA from funwebsite.com, dark horse. All that estrogen and testosterone flushing around your body has been making you hyped, but after ovulation, the luteal phase begins. Your uterus lining is preparing to shed, and estrogen and testosterone dip, meaning that your energy and productivity levels won't be as high as they have been for the last couple of weeks. Your progesterone levels increase, which has a sort of calming effect. In a work context, this is a time for wrapping things up, doing admin tasks, writing reports. Rather than riding a creativity wave, now is the time that you'll probably get the most pleasure from kind of completing tasks and getting things finished. It's a good time for editing, examining, and improving your work. Take what hyped up follicular you came up with and get it honed and actioned upon. Now, in this phase, estrogen isn't satisfied with a nice calm ride down to lower levels, and it actually starts increasing again in the middle of the phase to prep you for potential pregnancy. If that doesn't happen, then it drops back down. This hormonal fluctuation is one thing that can lead to PMS, mood changes, headaches, acne, bloating, cravings, the sort of symptoms that you might be used to experiencing just before your period begins. And importantly, try not to compare yourself to the version of you that you've been for the last couple of stages. Sometimes when the creativity and the energy dips a little, we can become frustrated with ourselves and start thinking that we're being lazy. But unlike my sexuality, this is just a phase and the energy will return, so you may as well embrace it and do your chiller loose end tying luteal tasks at this point. And finally, the menstruation phase: reflection, organisation, bleeding. Averages about 4 days. This is the bleeding bit and the start of a new cycle. Your unfertilised egg and uterus lining exits out your vagina and hopefully not onto any new underwear. All hormone levels are low, which means focus and energy are generally at their lowest. Period pain, if you are blessed with it as I am, won't help either. In an ideal world, this would be pottering about time, that valuable subconscious chill time that's needed to supplement creativity. Reduce social commitments, rest where possible, and cut yourself some slack if you're working at a slower pace. It's also a good time for organising and reflection. Declutter and rearrange your workspace and ask yourself, how have things gone the last month or so? Am I happy with where I'm going? What do I want to achieve next month? That's the voice that my reflection happens in. All of this can be, and often is, accompanied by hot water bottles and groaning a bit. And if you're in a lot of pain, try and take some time off sick. Now, I'm a recent but big fan of this whole trying to see periods in a positive light thing. And maybe if we stop having a go at ourselves for feeling sluggish and slow, then we might see our lower energy menstruation phase as a signal to give our bodies a break and an opportunity to do some of those reflective and organisational things that I mentioned before. Again though, if you struggle doing that, no shame on you. It can be an exhausting time, both the menstruation phase and life at the moment. Oh, and as for the fun website name, I was disheartened to see that this phase doesn't get one. Why? Where's the crampy cocoon or the bleeding mystery? You know? And those are the 4, boom, phases. And those are the 4 phases. A pretty quick summary, I might add. My research also suggests some other stuff, like which stage you're in can influence which exercise you should be doing and the food that's best to eat. But those are a video for another time, maybe. Now, in terms of tuning into your personal cycles, there is no perfect formula here. Hormones are complex, and the length or even existence of these stages can vary from person to person. Birth control can mess with them, for example. The combined pill stops ovulation by essentially suppressing your menstrual cycle completely, so such phases may not be seen so clearly or even at all. On the other hand, ovulation still happens if you take the progesterone-only pill, so you may have hormonal fluctuations in line with a typical cycle. If you're on hormonal birth control and you aren't sure how it affects your cycles, I'd recommend looking into it, checking it out, talking to your doctor. If you've been through menopause, you'll have consistent low levels of all 3 hormones rather than a fluctuating 28-day cycle. These low levels can have side effects of their own, which normally even out over time. The time leading up to menopause, known as perimenopause, is a rocky one hormonally, with yet more fluctuations resulting in more variable side effects. Also, anecdotal evidence suggests that even though trans women who are on hormone replacement therapy won't experience the bleeding part of periods, they may still end up with a monthly cyclic rhythm that they can tap into, with some similar symptoms to what cis women experience. Even period poops. Now, there hasn't been much scientific investigation into the matter, as in the whole idea, not just the poops, but there are a lot of people out there who like to know what's going on here. Whatever your situation, it's all about listening to your own body, experimenting with different activities at different times, and seeing where your strengths and vulnerabilities are. Some people track their moods and mindsets to help them notice if patterns emerge. There may even be features or feelings that you can match to your cycle that I haven't mentioned here. And it not only means you may get to know yourself better, but anecdotal evidence suggests that working alongside your hormonal fluctuations rather than against them may actually reduce certain negative side effects you experience, including period pain. Some supplement this tracking by meditating to really check in with themselves and sense what place they're in that day. Now, it can sound a bit hippie-like, especially because I feel like mood feels like it should be some ethereal thing that isn't chemically governed. But again, when I consider how much hormones can change my mood, meditating to check in with your internal chemical situation doesn't seem so ridiculous, whether you have a menstrual cycle or not. But to be honest, I feel like having an awareness of the impact hormones can have on you, and for some people of the existence of these stages, is a good starting block. Speaking of having an awareness of the existence of something, smooth segue Sophie, I recently discovered something called orgasmic meditation. Long story short, what started out as a curious scientific paper that I thought I could chat about ended up in me discovering a cult. Why am I telling you this? Well, I can't make a video about it here because demonetization, but I can put that video on Nebula. Nebula is a streaming service set up by a bunch of creators as a place where we don't have to worry about YouTube's algorithm. There's loads of us on there posting all our YouTube videos ad-free, so without sponsor segments like this, as well as extended versions and exclusive content. On YouTube, whether my videos get shown to you or not is controlled by many things, from statistics and data to the way the wind is blowing that day. I get worried about making chattier, freeform, less sleeked down videos on here for fear of losing watch time and therefore my video not getting recommended to people and therefore my video and channel getting buried. On Nebula, I can try out new things, including being less scripted or making risque exposés like this. Strokes her clitoris for 15 minutes, wearing a glove. Always sexy to have latex in the bedroom. Not only this, but we've teamed up with documentary giant CuriosityStream to give you a great deal. If you don't know, CuriosityStream is a website with thousands of high-quality documentaries featuring the likes of Davey Attenborough and Miranda Cosgrove. I recently powered through a bunch of their mini-docs in their science short series on 1.5 times speed. They cover topics from oxytocin, if you're into how hormones affect you, to using tech to reconstruct papyrus poems from the OG lesbian Sappho. If you sign up to CuriosityStream using my link, you can get 26% off, accessing it for a year for just $14.79. That's a year for £10 or a year for €13 approximately. And not only that, but you get Nebula included in that price too. So you get all the documentaries on CuriosityStream, plus all the videos and extras on Nebula for 28 US cents a week. It's genuinely such a good deal. To get said deal, sign up at curiositystream.com/sophsnotes. There's also a link in my description. You'll be helping to support my channel when you do, and I genuinely really appreciate it. And there's something kind of pertinent about me doing this now, because I just got a call from the mechanic about how much it's going to cost to fix my car. And it's not $15 for the year, I'll tell you that much. And if you watch my descent into unexpected orgasmic meditation madness, then do let me know what you think. And that's it. I hope this video has helped you shift your mindset. Rather than seeing cycles as a pain or a disadvantage, let's view them as a powerful tool if you work with yourself, not against yourself. Please do like this video if you like it, share it if you share it, subscribe it if you subscribe it, and comment with how your fluctuations affect you. And that's for all folks. We all got hormones, we all got some kind of cycles, and I want to hear about yours. Otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching, genuinely, have a lovely day, and remember to go with the flow. Look, I redid my Patreon page, how fresh. A big thank you to everyone, with a science word shout out to Tim Van Murrick, and a high-pitched hello to Angela, Dhruv and Terry. Because if you hadn't noticed, I'm British. That's enough of that. And those are the 4 phases. I'm not doing that. I feel like a crap kids TV presenter. Ooh, interesting. I feel like one of those lucky cats. Overexposure city. I've just realised that I find it really difficult to hold that pinky finger in. It's like I'm doing shadow puppeting. Ooh. I know what you're all thinking. Where do I get my shirts from? The answer is second-hand shops, guys. It's the way forward. The answer for this particular shirt is a second-hand shop in Berlin, but other second-hand shops are available. Vintage, they call them, the vintage shops. And that's it, you made it to the end. Here's a video I've selected for you, a one-off, and here's a little playlist of some of my favourites that I update every so often. And here's a cheeky little Patreon link. Thank you very much. Adios.